Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second session from the Jackson Insight Group study. Today we're going to be looking at Dancing the Dream by Michael Jackson. It seemed an obvious choice after the first session, which we based on Moonwalk, which was really successful. We had some absolutely unbelievable feedback from you, really positive feedback. You seemed to really enjoy it. We had like over 400 comments during the watch party, which was absolutely fantastic. If you did miss that, it is still on the group. And I believe Steph also uploaded it to YouTube. So if you haven't seen that, then maybe after this one, you can go and check that out. We had some really fantastic, interesting discussions. We talked about everything from family relationships to more intimate relationships with women, people like Diana Ross, Brooke Shields. We talked about Michael's feelings and relationships with children. We talked about his kind of lack of control for the first part of his life, and then how he sort of did various things like bought Neverland and, you know, went as a solo artist, all sort of in an attempt really to get his independence. So there were some really interesting conversations, lots of really different ways that people were interpreting the book and how that was coming across and how Michael was portrayed. So it was a really enjoyable chat, and I just hope that this one is as enjoyable. So let's start by discussing the book itself. How many of you four on the Zoom meeting, or you three I should say, have this version? This is the newer version that was released in 2009. How many of you have the, okay, so me and Danielle have got the reissue, and Nicole as well. And Casey, you, I believe, have got the original version, the 1992 version. When I ordered mine, I'd obviously seen pictures of that cover, and I kind of assumed that, you know, sometimes they have different versions in different countries. So I kind of assumed that was maybe the American version and this was the European version. But then I obviously found out that this was actually a reissue. And that there was an original version. So that is really interesting. And actually, ironically, you were the last to buy it. Casey literally bought hers like a few weeks ago, ready for this event. I mean, I only bought mine a couple of months ago, but it's just ironic that Casey was the last to buy and she's got the original issue. So that's pretty awesome. Casey, I'm guessing you haven't seen the reissue, but if we have a quick flick through yours, what do you sort of have on the first few pages, if you wouldn't mind just showing us, and we can see if it is any different.
So that's like the first picture that I have.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Okay. And then this one.
Yeah, same.
The dedication page.
Yeah.
Same. There really isn't much of a difference.
No, so I'm guessing then the only difference is the front cover then. And the back?
Maybe.
What's on the back of yours? Oh, okay, yeah, so it just seems like it's the sleeve then that's different. And what about if you take the sleeve off? We've just got a plain black.
Oh, okay, then this is different too.
Ah, I've seen that before. That looks really similar to the Moonwalk one. Yeah, that's really interesting. And you've got the autograph as well, which obviously you don't have in the reissue, which is really interesting. I wonder why they would have taken that out of the reissue version, especially because they did the reissue like pretty much straight after his death, didn't they?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they took the autograph out.
Yeah.
That would seemingly be a selling point, but anyway. Okay, interesting. So the book, Michael describes it as a collection of thoughts and essays, or reflections and essays. And one of the things that you'll find during this discussion is I refer to somebody called Elizabeth Amisu quite a few times. And the reason that I did some research on her is because she really studies Michael as an academic, from an academic perspective. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to read what she has to say on this book. She does a whole chapter on this. She dedicates a whole chapter to it in her book, The Dangerous Philosophies of Michael Jackson. And one of the things that she says about this book, which I think is one of the truest things I've read about this book, that it's one of the best kept secrets of Michael Jackson. And the reason that's really true for me is because I literally wasn't aware of this book until a couple of months ago. And I've been an avid fan since I was, you know, sort of 6 years old, like nearly 30 years. And I had no idea that this book even existed until a couple of years ago. Sorry, a couple of months ago. So I definitely think that that is true. And I do wonder why this book is not more well known. I mean, I definitely think that this book is sort of less familiar even to fans than something like Moonwalk. Have you guys always known about this, or did you find out about it later?
I've known about it for about a year.
No, I've known about it longer, and I had a different issue, which was a German one, a long time. Yeah, but maybe one of the explanation would be that this book was originally thought as a souvenir book, that somebody could take home from Dangerous to a concert. So it would be really interesting to know if one of our viewers does have bought this book as a souvenir at a concert.
So it did actually make it as a souvenir. I know that was the intention, but that did actually happen, did it?
Yeah, as far as I could read it, yeah.
Nicole, when did you first hear about this book? Have you always known about it since its release?
No, I only just found or came across it a year ago, maybe. And again, the same as you, I've been a fan for a long time, and it's not something that I was aware of. Yeah, it's quite interesting that it can be sort of like a hidden gem, as others have referred to it as. So
yeah, it just seems so weird that something that's written by the man that we all kind of idolize, you know, which actually for a lot of us, and I've seen this term used, you know, a lot over the last few weeks while discussing it on the group. I mean, this is people's Bible, you know, this is the equivalent of the Bible for a lot of fans. And for something so significant and that really epitomizes Michael and the person that he was and what he believed, it does seem unbelievable that this is not
better known.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe that this even existed, you know.
Well, we are going to start to change this tonight.
Yes, we will. We're promoting it for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we did before, we're going to start with a quiz. Now, the quiz is largely based on the book. So obviously, if you haven't read the book, there might be some of the questions that you might struggle to answer, but some of them you can probably work out, or you may know from, you know, just your knowledge of Michael Jackson. So if you are going to participate in the quiz, then if you could get a pen and paper ready. And as we did last time, I will give the answers at the end of the session. So after all the discussion points have taken place, and as we're going to kind of conclude the show, I will give the answers then. So there are 10 questions. Question number 1, which 2 people is the book dedicated to? Which 2 people is the book dedicated to? It's technically dedicated to one person, but there are 2 people mentioned at the start of the book. So I tend to think it was probably dedicated to both. Which 2 people is the book dedicated to? If you are doing this while you're sort of commenting, if you're commenting at the same time, if you could not write your answers in the comments, just because it ruins the quiz for other people. So just make sure that you're writing it down on a piece of paper or on your phone. And then when we're going through the answers at the end, then you can sort of type your answers just to compare your answers with others. But for now, if you could refrain from typing your answers into the comments. Okay, number 2, finish the quote from the introduction. I think Michael appeals to the in all of us. So finish the quote from the introduction. I think Michael appeals to the in all of us. Which word is missing? Question number 3. How many verses are there in Planet Earth? How many verses are there in Planet Earth? I'll accept 2 answers for this because there's one verse where I can't work out if it ends on that page and then a new verse is started, or whether one verse is split over 2 pages. So I'll accept 2 possible answers for that one. Question number 4. A drawing of which animal accompanies the essay Enough for Today? A drawing of which animal accompanies the essay Enough for Today? Number 5. Complete the title of the essay. The fish that was... Complete the title of the essay. The fish that was... Number 6. A screenshot from which music video or short film shares the page with the poem Quantum Leap? A screenshot from which music video, short film, shares the page with the poem Quantum Leap? Number 7. What is the title of the last entry in the book? What is the title of the last entry in the book? Number 8. What are the last 3 words written by Michael prior to the credits? So before he gives his thanks, which I think is the last page or the penultimate page, what is the last 3 words written by Michael before he gives the thanks? Number 9. Which song appears first on the Dangerous album? Will You Be There or Heal the World? So both of those songs or poems or lyrics appear in the book, but which one appears first on the Dangerous album? Will You Be There or Heal the World? And number 10, which of those 2 songs, Will You Be There or Heal the World, appears first in the book? Which of those 2 songs or poems appears first in the book? Okay, so if you just keep those safe, and when we come to the end of the session, I'll reveal the answers for you and you can let us know how well you did. Okay, so let's start our discussion on the book. So I think one of the things that stuck out most to us, and obviously we've been speaking about the book for the last few weeks, one of the things that really stuck out to us and practically was a little bit of a pain for us, but you know, as we know, Michael never did anything without a reason, not having a contents page. You know, this isn't a novel, this isn't something that, you know, kind of just flows. It's broken up poems, essays, and yet there's no contents page. What do we think the purpose was of doing that, and how do we feel about not having a contents page? Do we feel, I mean, although practically it would make it more difficult to kind of reference and find, you know, particular poems, just sort of objectively, did we feel that it kind of added anything to the book? Did we quite like it like that, or do we think it would have, do we think it might have hindered, you know, the understanding or the meaning of the book? Does anyone want to start? I'll throw that one open.
I'll go. I wonder if it was purposeful in that, I mean, the book, you don't have to read it from start to finish. You don't have to, you could start anywhere and kind of pick and choose. I know when I first got the book, it wasn't for this. I read it differently this time around, but when I first got the book, I just flicked through and I was sort of looking at the pictures. You know, when you first get a book, you're all excited, you want to see what's inside. So I'm flicking through and then something would pop up and the title would, I don't know, speak to me or stood out to me. So I would read that one and then I'd keep flicking. And so for the first little while that I had the book, I just read bits and pieces here and there. I didn't actually read it from front to back, if that makes sense. So I wonder if was the intention, because you certainly don't need to read it from start to finish. It's not that you need to know the first part in order to understand the end. So I wonder if not having a contents page, it's meant to be a little bit more dip in, dip out, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I never even realized before I really started working with this book, and particularly looking for things, that there is no contents page. And if you look at the book, I think it could be used as a coffee table book. You just look at the pictures and then you read a little bit, and yeah. But obviously now we were referring to this and this and that, and then it was like a bit difficult where you always had to search again in the book. Yeah? But the normal reader lies there on the coffee table, you just have a look at it, and well, whatever talks to you, you read.
Yeah, and different things will pop to you at different times.
Yeah, exactly.
But Daniela, I agree with you, because I did read this sort of front to back. I did read it sort of like I would a novel, and it was only when I was speaking to you one day, and you know, we were talking about particular entries, and you were sort of looking for something. You said, "Oh God, you know, it doesn't have a contents page," and until you said that, I never realised either. So I sort of, although it's become an issue for us, because obviously we're using it to do what we're doing now, and obviously we're going to be sort of flicking back and going from this poem to that essay, it would be really helpful for us to have a contents page. I think the fact that actually none of us particularly noticed until we were planning for this session, I mean, I think that says a lot. It obviously doesn't need a contents page. That was never part of the plan, and it's not actually necessary for it to have one. Casey, have you got any thoughts about how the book's kind of laid out? Or
I mean, I kind of was thinking the same thing that they did. I didn't, until you guys said something, I never noticed it didn't either, because you don't need one, really.
no,
You really don't.
no, you
I
don't.
mean, the whole point, and I do it with a lot of poetry books, that I don't necessarily read the whole thing, but I flip through it and something will jump out. But I've never used, for this type of book, I've never used a contents page.
I do have a copy of the contents, and I am going to post this, if I haven't done already, in the comments, just so that when we do refer to sort of certain poems or essays, I will try to, and we'll all try to remember to say the page number, but if we forget to, you can just refer to this and go to the page if you do have the book in front of you. I did see someone who was sort of discussing the book or reviewing the book. Their theory was that the reason there was no contents page is because it was kind of supposed to act like just kind of flowing consciousness. So there's no kind of planning or preparation to this book, although of course there would have been. But that's not how Michael wanted it to come across. It was kind of all supposed to act like a dream, as in the title, Dancing the Dream. It's all supposed to act like a dream, and it's just kind of flowing in and out of different thoughts. And I think, to me, when you read this book and you think about that, it makes complete sense.
I think I heard it on a podcast once referred to as almost like a journal. Like if somebody was writing down their thoughts and reflections in a journal, there wouldn't be an order. It would be a bit random. You know, different themes would be in different points. So it's maybe it was to also give that impression to us as the fans that it's, you know, it's almost like you've got his journal.
And that is what it feels like, isn't it? I mean, obviously we're going to discuss that more, but that is exactly what it's like. It is like he's given us the opportunity to read his most inner, private thoughts. So yeah, I think that's a really
very personal.
So the dedications, this is kind of obviously answering one of the questions, but that's okay. So two main dedications. The official dedication is, as always, to his mum. I've always found it really interesting. I know I think I brought this up on the Moonwalk discussion, but I mean, absolutely everything that he did musically, artistically, he always dedicated it to his mother, always. And I always found it really interesting. Not that I would necessarily expect him to on this, but particularly on some of his music, I always found it really interesting that either nothing or very, very little was ever dedicated to his father. And I was always really surprised with that, particularly on the music front, because of the influence that Joe had. But you know, it's so lovely that just everything is dedicated to his mum, and he obviously had just such a wonderful relationship with her. And of course there is a poem called Mother that's in the book on page, so I just got to find this now, on page 46. How do we all like that poem? Any thoughts on that one? It's just pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? It's just a lovely poem for his mother. I don't think there's any kind of hidden meaning or any symbolism. It is what it is. It's a kind of ode to his mum.
Yeah, and I mean, as a mother, can there be anything better than reading this?
I agree. And I wonder how many he may have written privately to her. You know, that's the one that he's chosen to release to the public and for his fans to see. I wonder how much he would have created stuff like that for his mum.
Yeah.
The other dedication, unofficial dedication, it says with special thanks, I believe. Let me just check the wording. So it says, Deepak, thank you for your inspiration and for your love. Until I read that, I really had no idea who Deepak Chopra was, which seems ironic now that I know how much he was involved in Michael's life. I'd never really heard of him. So I had to do a lot of research on this, and I think that we all sort of really looked him up. And I think, Nicole, you had a little bit of an idea about who he was, but I know Daniela in particular did quite a lot of research. So Daniela, just for people who don't know, could you just give us a little introduction into who he was?
I mean, I very first came across the name of Deepak after Michael died, and then he was seen a couple of times in TV, doing some really small interviews, and this is all I would know. So that made me really curious about this book being dedicated to him and thanked. So as you said, I dig deep. I'm going to tell you now about the relationship of Michael and Deepak, how this came together. I took this out of this book, Make That Change. I found it there, and then I do a little bit out of Wikipedia, just to give a rough overview. Okay. So, Michael Jackson met Deepak Chopra in December of 1978 through mutual friends, which were Jacqueline Onassis and Liz Taylor, taking him to a party at Neverland. Michael and Deepak hit right off and developed a very deep and long-lasting friendship until the end. It's said that after his trial, Michael went right away to Deepak's house in San Diego, where he stayed until his traveling documents were returned to him and the bail was paid back. So far, that makes the Change book. He writes a lot more. So, and then I got this out of Wikipedia just to have the background of the person a little bit. Deepak Chopra was born in 1946 and is an Indian-American author and alternative medicine advocate. A prominent figure in the New Age movement, his books and videos have made him one of the best-known and wealthiest figures in alternative medicine. Chopra studied medicine in India before emigrating in 1970 to the United States. In 1980, he became chief of staff at the New England Memorial Hospital. In 1985, he met Maharishi Yogi and became involved in the Transcendental Meditation movement. Shortly thereafter, he resigned his position to establish the Maharishi Ayurveda Health Center. Chopra gained following after he was interviewed about his books on Oprah Winfrey Show in 1993. He left then the TM movement to become the executive director of Mind-Body Medicine at Sharps Healthcare Center. In 1996, he co-founded the Chopra Center for Wellbeing. Chopra is seeing the human body as undergirded by a quantum mechanical body composed not of matter, but of energy and information determined by one's state of mind. He is considered as the person who introduced America to Ayurveda, and Time magazine counts him among the 100 outstanding minds of the 20th century. Nevertheless, there is some controversy about him. A philosopher named Robert Carroll writes that Chopra, to justify his teachings, attempts to integrate Ayurveda with quantum mechanics. Chopra says that what he calls quantum healing cures any matter of ailment, including cancer, through effects that he claims are literally based on the same principle as quantum mechanics. This has led physicists to object to his use of the term quantum in reference to medical conditions and the human body. His first book, and he wrote what I see here over 50, was published in 1989, named Quantum Healing. We need that information later again.
We cannot have this conversation without knowing who Deepak Chopra is. It is just
impossible.
It's impossible, and it's really astonishing. The more research that you do and the more that you look into the book, it's astonishing what a huge influence that man was on Michael's writings for this book. So it's absolutely essential that we sort of get that background. He is literally the whole reason this book happened. And just to quote, I am going to share, I wanted to really make this session a lot more interactive than the last one. I wanted to include sort of some on-screen articles, videos, music, but a few people warned me and said, oh, you know, you have to be really careful with copyright laws and things like that. And I didn't really have a lot of time to start really delving into all that, and obviously I don't want to get the group in trouble, or I don't want us to do this talk and then put it on YouTube and it gets pulled down. So for this session we're going to do exactly the same as before, so you're just going to see our 4 beautiful faces for however long we have the conversation for. But what I will do is everything that we refer to and everything that I would have put on the screen, I'll just share it in the comments. So what I'll do now while I'm reading this is I'll share the website link where I got this direct quote from. But this was a quote from Deepak when he wrote an article when Michael died, and I believe it was called a tribute to my friend Michael. And this is what he says about how Dancing the Dream came about. The closest we ever became, perhaps, was when Michael needed a book to sell primarily as a concert souvenir, which is what Daniela said before. It would contain pictures for his fans, but there would also be a text consisting of short fables. I sat with him for hours while he dreamily wove Aesop-like tales about animals, mixed with words about music and his love of all things musical. The project became Dancing the Dream after I pulled the text together for him, acting strictly as a friend. It was this time together that convinced me of the modus vivendi Michael had devised for himself. To counter the tidal wave of stress that accompanies megastardom, he built a private retreat in a fantasy world where pink clouds veiled inner anguish and Peter Pan was a hero, not a pathology. I think that quote is really important and gives us, you know, an insight into where the origins of Dancing the Dream came from. I will also post, when I was doing my research, Daniela told me about a book called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, which Deepak Chopra wrote. And I didn't have time to read the book, so I had a look on YouTube for a summary, and I will post the link to that summary. And I mean, if you read that summary, Daniela's got the actual physical copy of the book, but if you read even just the summary, if you can't read the book like me, again, it's quite astonishing, you know, how reflective of Michael that whole book is. I mean, you just see so many traits that were kind of in Michael's nature, but also that you really see particularly from like the Dangerous era onwards. So I would definitely recommend taking time to have a look at that as well.
Yeah, and did you notice, did you look at the introduction? I mean, this is how I got on the trail of all this. I mean, it just sprang on me, you know? Even in the introduction pages, just page 4 of the whole book. I mean, if you read the last sentence, I have it here, yeah? And it just jumped out of the text, divinity in motion.
We all know that.
I know that, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that got me going on what I will explain you later on.
Yeah.
That was the initial spark.
Okay, so let's leave Deepak for a little while. He's going to come back later with a bang. Let's move on to the introduction by Elizabeth Taylor. Really interesting reading her introduction. Obviously, a lot of it was very kind of her subjective opinion of Michael and how she viewed Michael and what a wonderful friend he was, what a wonderful man he was. And so I just had a few questions for the panel based on what she said. I'd love to know what our own responses would be to her ideas. So the first thing that I'd like to know is I believe she actually starts off her whole introduction with this, but let me just double check because I don't want to misquote anybody. Yeah, so she starts off the introduction by saying, when I hear the name Michael Jackson, I think of. So she says brilliance of dazzling stars, lasers, and deep emotions. And I was just interested to know how you would finish that sentence. So when I hear the name Michael Jackson, Casey, what would you say? When I hear the name Michael Jackson, what do you think of?
Instantly, I just think of greatness, just love, kindness.
Yeah. They're just synonymous, aren't they? The name Michael Jackson and those traits like kindness, love, humanitarian behavior, you know, it's just, that is just Michael. And you can't hear that name without thinking of those qualities. Nicole, what about you? Oh, I think we've all frozen. Might have to just get everyone out. Oh,
yeah. No, I don't think she.
So that comes a lot in my mind. I mean, first I think about my own fan story, of course, yeah. And
did I crash?
No, you froze, Emma, and you were gone. Yes, again.
You guys froze. Well, anyway, we're still recording, so we'll just carry on, and hopefully it will still stay in one.
So, okay.
Anyway,
you take the lead again. I just chipped in.
Oh, perfect. Go on then. Go for it. Sorry, if you were carrying on, go for it.
Okay, that's what I said. I think about my own fan story, and then I think about that. Michael was always like kind of door opener for me. I worked all around the world for like 25 years, and I had to like stay and talk to people I don't know, and you had to create like a kind of atmosphere which was comfortable, and also with my guest I took along. And well, this was always something I would say. I mean, and I experienced this. He is known around the world. I mean, I had a little tour guide in Indonesia. Yeah, he didn't practically know nothing about what he should have known, but he sat there and then he's saying, "We are the world" to us in the bus on the microphone to the German guests in the back of the bus. I mean, and this was always like, you know, these awkward situations, yeah. And there's always something or whatever what relies to Michael, and then you go, or I went, you know, Michael Jackson, and of course everybody knew Michael Jackson, and everybody had to say something. It was like breaking the ice. That was a great experience, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, even yeah. In the deepest of Africa, they would know. The Maasai, they would know. Yeah, and this is what I always wondered how that can be. Yeah, and I think this is something what makes him very special, that he can talk like to the inner core of people. Yeah, how do I say that now? Like music and dance, doesn't matter where you go in the world, if it is Mexico, if it is Indonesia, if it is Africa, people express themselves through music and dance. And that is since ancient time like this. This is something that is in us, And then comes culture and your upbringing and religion and education. And this put all layers on this core we have. And what I always think is that Michael had the ability to go through these layers and reach your core through his dance and music. That what comes to my mind, like out of own experience. No? He went through the layers did not matter. He talked to the inside of people.
They always say dancing is, a universal language.
But you have to break through to the layers. People are so different everywhere, so different. Cannot be more different.
Yeah. Nicole, how about you?
I struggle to think of words, to be honest. I keep seeing, when you say the sentence to me, I see hundreds of pictures in my mind of little videos of him, dancing or on stage, or I suppose if I was writing that, I would say something about, greatest entertainer of all time, that kind of thing. But then I also get the other side, the humanitarian, the kindness, the love, that's often less well known and misunderstood sometimes.
And what about his best quality? Because Elizabeth Taylor talks about what his qualities were. So what would we say is his best quality? It's a hard one, right?
Would you count his aura as a quality?
Yeah.
His aura, because this made him so special, his aura. And all the people like you hear on podcasts and you hear in interviews, they always talk about his very special aura.
Yeah.
The energy. People always talk about the energy.
Yeah.
His compassion. It's definitely another one.
I think for me, one of the things that I always really admired about him is he always fought for what was right, or what he believed was right. And even when he, was criticized for it, when it was twisted into being something negative, he never backed down, and he always kept up that fight for what he believed. And journalists, he'd be sat in front of journalists and they would, literally be insinuating that he was a bad person for the way he thought, and he would sit there and he would say, no, like, this is the right thing to do, this is what I believe, and this is love, and this is, this is how the world should be, and that's what I believe is right, and that's, what I'm going to continue to push as my message. And I really admire him for that, because I think that a lot of people would have we always say the amount that he went through, from being a baby, until his death. I mean, what that man went through physically, emotionally, and we all know that he was very vulnerable, but he was, in a lot of ways, he was very strong.
Yeah, we fought with that. I mean, normally if something happens to Louis like this, you go to a mental institution and you never come out again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I often think, if people had to deal with even a quarter of what he had to deal with in his life, I mean,
it would break them.
People wouldn't be able to cope with it, and he just did. And he kept going and going, and yes, he had his problems, yes, he had his ways of dealing with it, but I'm not trying to say that he didn't have mental health issues, but I just think that he did continue to keep going. He never gave up. He continued to fight, and I have so much respect for him for that, because I just think that, especially the people who criticize him, actually, I just think that they would never be able to cope with what he did. Never.
I guess nobody.
No.
I don't know.
Sorry if I repeat something that's just been said, but just to hearing you speak about that sort of mental strength, I suppose, but there's also courage to write some of the songs that he did, particularly on the History album, and have kind of stand up for what he believed in, even though he knew he might get ridiculed for it. He still did what he thought was right.
Yeah.
His career suffered massively because of this change in mentality from going from, just commercial music, wanting to sell the most amount of records, wanting to be the best. When he shifted into, actually, I want to use my status and my talent to literally heal the world, that affected his career massively. And people who were not, kind of diehard fans, they did start to lose interest. They didn't want Michael to be an activist. They didn't want to listen to his political views. They wanted to hear music like Billie Jean and Beat It and Thriller and Off the Wall, and they wanted him to entertain them, and they weren't interested in hearing about his human rights views and all that. And I think that even after releasing some of the songs that he did where he really was pushing that message, and he obviously knew that his album sales were affected. Obviously we know it's because of other factors as well, but I really do believe that. I think that shift in mentality from becoming the best performer is my goal to, well, healing the world and human rights is my goal, despite the fact that that was inevitably affecting his career and his sales. He didn't revert back to okay, actually I'm going to leave that, I'm not going to try and save the world, I'm not going to sing about police brutality anymore or institutional racism. Although that is affecting my career, that's what I believe in, that's what I want to use my talent to do. And he continued to do that to the detriment of his own career.
Yeah, but I remember when we had this 3-hour conversation that other night, we could exactly point out when this shift happened. No, it was still like on a Bad album. I want to be the best. I want to be the most successful. I want to show you all my fellow musicians. I'm angry about not getting this award. I thought it's for me. And then on the Dangerous album, it was just a totally different thing. Later on, we are going to throw some years in the ring.
Yeah. We'll delve into that a bit more.
Yeah, indeed, though.
One of the things that Elizabeth Taylor said in her introduction as well is, here she was referring to Michael giving so much of himself and being so open with, society and the world. And she believed that that's what made the world identify with him in the way that it does. This was her quote is, it makes the world identify with him in the way that it does. And I don't know if I agree with that personally. I think that the fact that he opened himself up so much, I mean, it's ironic because in the Moonwalk talk, we spoke a lot about how closed he was and he should have explained himself more. But I feel that when he did open up, and we discussed this and we said this is probably why he didn't open up further, I actually think that's what made people kind of distance themselves from him, because they didn't really like what, I mean, again, diehard fans, we loved it. We loved him opening up. We loved to know who the real Michael was, what was in his heart, what he felt, what he believed, because we didn't judge any of it and we could completely empathize with all of it. But I think if you're not a diehard fan, people found it really difficult to identify with him and who he was and what he believed. So I don't know if him opening up emotionally and physically. Am I phrasing again? Oh. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Back.
But do you know what it is? It's that we were talking before we started recording. The weather here is so bad. It's really changed since yesterday. And, you know, I said last time I'm in the attic, so that the internet's not always amazing. I'll try and get downstairs next month. So sorry about that. But yeah, I just don't know if I agree with her. I don't think that him opening up, I don't know if it did make people feel closer to him or feel that they could identify with him. What do you think?
I think you have to consider the year in which it was written. I mean, the book was published originally in 1992. This was a totally different thing for him still. That was before every malicious thing started.
I think too, we obviously Dancing the Dream is kind of part of the Dangerous era. Like it kind of all goes in together. And when you look at it, I mean, maybe not at the time, but through hindsight, when I look back at the Dangerous era, it was certainly a time of him trying to give more of himself personally. Like there's lots and lots of
he did the Oprah interview and
kind of quote with that. Like you had the Dangerous album came out November 91, Dancing the Dream came out June 92, and then at the beginning of 93 you have the Super Bowl. February 93 you have Oprah interview. February 93 you had the Grammy Awards speech, which in and of itself, the Grammy Awards speech, he didn't, before that he never gave a speech as such. He would get up and accept an award, thank a few people, say I love you, and that would be the end of it. Whereas this whole time period, that for those couple of years, he was very much trying to show more of himself. The Dangerous album itself is more personal than his albums had been prior to. Then he's got this book coming out, which is extremely personal. And I think that was part of the intention. I heard on a podcast once about the Super Bowl, the Grammy Awards acceptance speech, and the Oprah interview, that he was resistant to doing those three things apparently, but it was a publicist, one of his managers at the time, who pushed for it. But then he was happy with the results because, and he even says in the Grammy speech, it's nice to be thought of as a person rather than a personality. So I think it was a time period of him trying to show more of himself, and sort of that's kind of, I don't know, fitting of the book in some ways, that you sort of, you do see that that's almost the intention of the book, is to show more of himself, to show the person behind the music, so to speak. So I just wonder if Elizabeth Taylor's words are kind of reflective of what was happening there.
He must have talked, or they talked, about plans. How am I going to do? Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, though, because yeah, times in 1991, 92 are very different and his life was very different then to how it unfortunately unraveled in the years after. So you're right, and I think that a lot of these poems are very reflective of those times. I even think some of the poems he might not have written, or he might have written very differently 5 years later, because of some of what happened in 93 and stuff. So that'd be kind of interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get, sorry, Daniela.
I think if 93 would not have happened, we would have gotten a totally different Michael, a more open Michael, like he intended to be already before.
Yeah.
In some ways it made 93 in some ways it made 93 even more devastating. Well, not that it could never not be devastating, but the fact that 90 to 91, 92, and the beginning of 93, he was starting to be seen more. He was more accessible, if that makes sense. Like as a fan, there was, you had a TV interview with Oprah that was huge. Like he'd never, and he was making a speech at the Grammys, and you got to hear him talking, and his thoughts. There was so much happening, and then it was almost like a high, and then
he was out in the open. He presented himself. And then it all changed after 93. Understandable.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder whether you know, the 93 allegations, whether they were timed for that reason. I mean, Michael really was, he really was. People, you know, think about, well, Thriller was the best-selling album, yes, but really the height of Michael's success and his fame was definitely in the early 90s. You know, let's not pretend that Thriller happened and everything went downhill from there. No, Michael was at his most famous, his most successful in the early 90s, and that's why the allegations happened in 93 and not in, you know, 88, for example. Definitely.
Yeah.
I've always believed that as well, that it was definitely timed that way on purpose.
Yeah.
And interestingly too, he was almost doing the same sorts of things in the early 2000s, like around 2003. The intention of the Martin Bashir documentary was along the lines of the Oprah interview, and there was all these other things planned apparently that never eventuated. And again, then you have more allegations. So it's just the correlation there is quite interesting, I find too.
Like
yeah, but also already in 93, I mean, if you listen to that secretly taped conversation, with Chandler, you know, I have the big people behind me. You know, I mean, something must have, or someone must have triggered him off to do that.
Yeah.
That was a plan. That was a setup. Yeah.
We'll have to do a review, well, not a review, a discussion on Geraldine Hughes's book, and we can talk for hours about the allegations.
Oh yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Right, let's stick with this book. So, we really discussed about how we can separate. I mean, there's 46 entries in this book, and we really talked about how we can kind of separate it into themes, because we kind of wanted to talk about each theme at a time. So between us, we came up with global welfare, which is kind of combining conservationism, you know, human rights, racism, all that kind of stuff. Childhood, love, and spirituality. So we've categorized them into 4 themes, and we're going to be talking about each of the themes on their own. We're going to be talking about our favorite entries from each theme or each category, and I'm really pleased to have got quite a few mailbag comments from people who wanted to chip in with their ideas to, you know, talk to us about their favorite entries too. So let's start with the first one, which is global welfare. So how is this theme represented in the book? Because obviously, like we say, it doesn't have a contents page. In the book, the entries are not categorized into themes. It's not like, you know, you start off with all the entries about global welfare and then all the entries about love and then all the entries about childhood. So it is something that, you know, they're kind of very sporadic. So Nicole, how is the theme of global welfare represented in the book, do you think?
Well, for me, there's sort of almost 2 sections of the global welfare, and I've always found it really interesting that MJ kind of groups them together. So there's obviously the environmental destruction that he's really passionate about, and you know, saving the world literally in terms of the environment. And then the other side is almost like, so environmental destruction and then social destruction almost, where he talks about children and neglect, racism, you know, social issues basically. And I've always found it interesting that he does sort of group those together. When he talks about healing the world, he means all of those things. He doesn't mean just one side. And obviously throughout the book, there's so many, I mean, I didn't count them up, but out of the 46, there would be so many that at least touch on in some way one of those issues. From the baby seal at the end, which I only just recently rewatched the Earth Song video the other day, and every time I look at that poor baby seal, I don't know if you remember in the Earth Song video, there's the image of somebody, you don't actually see the man club the seal, but you see him go to, and then it stopped. And as I watched it the other day, I just was reading the baby seal, and then I happened to watch it, and I just jumped, and I get that awful image in my mind. But obviously that was the intention of that video, but there's so many entries throughout the book that touch on those environmental issues, as well as the social issues, and trying to, I think a key message about nature is trying to see the magic in nature in the way that a child does. I suppose it crosses over into our other theme there as well.
Betty Lou wrote in, and I think this quote that she sent in really ties in well with what you just said, Nicole, because she said that Michael's view is that we clean the planet by cleaning the human way of thinking. And so, you know, the job of healing the world and cleaning the environment and making the world a better place literally starts in the human mind. And we kind of have to fix the social issues in order to fix the environmental issues. If people continue to not care about the environment, or if people continue to breed, you know, their children to be racist, or neglect their children, not educate them, not give them love, then that is eventually going to filter in to environmental issues, you know, and it's all kind of a vicious cycle. And so I think that was a really interesting thing for Betty Lou to say, and it's pretty much what you've just said. You know, it all kind of has to start with us, because we're the only people that can, you know.
That was, you know, who is they? It's us. You have to do it. Yeah.
Nicole, what was your favourite sort of entry or entries about this particular theme?
My two favourites, I chose magic and ecstasy. Magic because I think it, I love some of the phrases from magic that are also in the Grammy Awards speech. So I guess it stands out to me in that way. But you know, magic kind of is all about, I guess, seeing the beauty and the magic in nature. In order to want to save it, you have to have a love for it. So I think, you know, it mentions in magic about how a child sees delight in a little tadpole jumping in a pond on the ground, whereas as adults we lose that. And so I just really like that. It's not really a poem, that one, it's more of a reflection, but that encouraging us to see that wonder and see that magic. And ecstasy, I just love the way ecstasy is written. The rhythm of the poem it's something, I can't really explain what I mean, but certain poems have rhythms, obviously, but the rhythm of it and the way that it's worded, and the idea that why can't we all embrace life and be happy and put an end to all of the alienation, fragmentation, and he names some of the things that we need to put an end to. It's kind of like the goal, I suppose. So that's why I like those two.
Just for reference, magic is on page 50. Have the book. Oh, by Frozen again.
Sorry, I should have said the page numbers. Ecstasy is page 90 and magic is page 50.
Thanks, Nicole. Am I back on?
There you go.
I'm back on, right. Oh, sorry, guys. Daniela, what was your favourite entry from the sort of global welfare theme?
Yeah, I had that one in the mirror. You find this on page 143. Yeah, why? Because it's a conclusion, yeah, and a reflection of everything what the whole theme circle had between. It's all to found in there again. It's like a summary of this whole other poems, yeah, and a conclusion. So I find this great.
Lovely. And Casey, what about you?
Yeah.
I had that one as well, but I also had Mother Earth, which talks a lot about, you know, how we treat our earth, and a lot of people are destroying it from littering and things. And one of the lines in that specific one I also really liked was, "We have brought our garbage and our wars and our racism to every part of the world." And that line just really stood out to me.
Very strong line, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
On the topic of, well, hatred, I suppose, I really liked, and I was surprised, I'm going to come to the polls that I did on the group later on, but I was really surprised to see this being really low down on the list, because one of my favourites was Berlin 1989, which was on page 92. I really loved this for various reasons. I loved the kind of personification of the wall, you know, the wall acting like a person. I always think that's really clever, and, you know, it's obviously very artistic, which Michael was. And I just loved the message, which was love triumphs over hatred. You know, it talks about the fact that, you know, this argument had been going on, this war had been going on for so long, and no one could come to a peaceful agreement. And so this wall just kind of stood for all these years. And eventually people saw their loved ones on the other side of the wall. And so, you know, the wall came down. And, you know, I really love history. I think it's really fascinating. And the fact that he's taken an event, personified the object that created the divide, and then had the message, sent the message out that, you know, love always is stronger than hatred. I just, I really loved that one in particular. Childhood. How do we feel that that theme is sort of represented in the book? Would anyone like to start with this one? Okay, so
we know that this was always something he worked on. It was always a theme for him, childhood. Very important for him, childhood. He talked a lot about childhood, how childhood should be, how his childhood was.
Yeah. One of the things that really struck me in Moonwalk, and then again when I was reading this book, is that both of them came out and, well, were written and came out before the 93 allegations, and yet both of them speak so heavily about the importance of children, his relationship with children, his feelings towards children. And so to me, I feel like I want to show these books, and particularly the reflections that are about children or childhood, to the people that doubt him, because I feel like saying, well, if he was saying all this stuff that he did, you know, post allegations about the fact that he loved children, and, you know, he just wants to, you know, love them, and he wants to promote love, and like people really doubt that. They think that that's a justification for him to be able to do what he was doing. And I feel like I just want to show people these reflections in these books and say, look, he was writing this before he was even, you know, accused of doing anything. This is the real Michael. This is genuinely what he thinks, what he believes in his heart. It's got nothing to do with, you know, trying to justify his behavior, or, you know, trying to twist the truth. Like, this is him. And we've got two books now. We've got one that was 1988. We've got another one now that was 1992. This is the real Michael. And I feel like I want to just show that to people who doubt him, you know, unless of course it's some long-winded plan, some devious plan where he's sort of created all this sort of agenda before he's, you know, come on, this is Michael, this is who he is, this is what he believes.
I like the way that children and global welfare kind of cross over, in a sense. Like, he sort of portrays children in this book as sort of like the hope for saving the world, if that makes sense. It's the wisdom of children. It's the magic that they see, the wonder that they see, There's so many poems and reflections that touch on what children have that we can learn from. And so many poems that also, like, for example, But the Heart Said No is maybe more about global welfare, but the way that it uses children at the end, that it's the children that will stand up and say no, the hope.
That could be an issue to note.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So annoying. It worked so well last week. I'm telling you, it's the weather. The weather's so bad that it's been raining and it's windy, and sorry, I'm really sorry. Daniela, you're my number 2. So if I freeze, you can just run the show.
Oh God. Yeah, I'm struggling.
No pressure.
Yeah. Okay.
Daniela, which kind of poem or reflection did you want to talk about for this category?
I choose The Last Tear. Why? Because I think there is a full-grown man speaking here, and I always cringe a little bit if Michael is always referred as childlike and whatever, and he really shows here he was a real grown man, you know, because only if you're childlike, you cannot experience something like that, and you cannot reflect, or if you're only childlike, reflect like this. And I really wonder who that person was, because he comes to the conclusion you can only go on with your life, yeah, when you forgive. Cried the last tear, and he forgave, and then that person touched him again. Yeah, you understand what I mean? Yeah, only through forgiveness. I mean, you get hurt so often, and you can only through forgiveness you can go on, because if you don't forgive, you are stuck. You don't move. You don't continue. So, and we were talking about Diana Ross a lot last time, and I think this is the situation with Diana Ross, that he was so hurt, so badly hurt, and then it took him a long time, but he overcame, and then he could go on. I was also thinking maybe he talks about his dad, but no, you wouldn't write something like this if you talk about your dad.
No, I can't see that for him.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are kind of 2 sides to my.
What do you think, Casey?
Yeah. I would say when it comes to the childhood one of the ones that stuck out to me a lot was On Children of the World, which is on page 80. And a big part of it was the very last line says, I want my work to help people rediscover the child that's hiding in them. And that, you can hear Michael with that, because he was, he's talked so many times about how children inspire him, and he likes to run around and play with them, and that is a big part of who he is. And the picture on that page, I continuously go back because I just happen to really, really like it. See it.
Oh yeah. For the childhood theme, I really loved the part 2 Magical Child, or Magical Child part 2. I think I loved it more than the part 1, and I really saw the part 2 as sort of a bit of it was quite autobiographical. I think it was definitely about him, and the message that I got from it was that, he's been through all this hurt, all this pain, he's been called a freak, he's been through this, that and the other in order to change the world. So it's kind of what I was saying before, that he's, despite his despite it completely, well, ruining his career really in a lot of ways. He's been through all this hurt to change the world, and now the rest of the world must continue the hard work, you know, continue what he started. If he's going to have to go through all of this to make the changes, then he...
Autobiographical, right? Autobiographical. Magic Child 1 and 2. Oh, I'm alone now.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
You're back again. I was just saying, did you hear me? That I was wrong in the line. When I said the last year, I was already at the theme love, but we were still talking about child.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And there I have Magical Child 1 and 2, because it is so autobiographical. It tells about himself. Yeah. Yeah,
so, and from looking at the comments on the poll,
it would be my number love. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
I think
and you didn't say anything, because what I said that made no sense at all.
Yeah, Magical Child is definitely a popular one. Yeah. I don't know how much you heard of what I said, but I basically said that I agree it's definitely autobiographical. And how I read it is he's saying, look, I've been through all this hurt. I've been called a freak. I've, you know, been tormented because of what I've tried to achieve, trying to heal the world. And the last line, this is on page 125. So I just get it up. The last line is, he says, so it says, if I just read you the last verse and then the last line. Magical Child was ready to bow, sow the seed, pick up the plough, with effortless ease, without a sigh, without a tear, without a cry, with silent perfection under God's direction, to sing together as one race, stem the tide, transform this place. Magical children, don't worry how, don't delay the moments now. And if you read the whole poem, how I read that is, you know, I've gone through all of this torment trying to do something positive, trying to change the world. And magical children, he's the magical child, magical children's now he's speaking to us, you know, now it's over to you to do your bit. And that's how I read that. And I loved that poem a lot. And like I said, Magical Child seems to be a really popular choice for the fans. Okay, so let's go on to love.
Don't you just love the picture that next to Magical Child?
Oh yeah. I love it. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
I think it's one occasion where the picture kind of goes with, in some places it's almost like there's contrasting pictures, but in this instance it's very much an appropriate picture for the it sort of blends almost that cheeky kind of, I can't even find the words to explain what I mean.
I agree. I love that picture.
To really compliment it.
Okay, love. So, Daniela, you spoke about the last two already. One of my, I had two favourites on the topic of love. One of them was Love, and Casey, I know this is one of yours as well. I just really liked it because I really feel it represents Michael really well, in that, you know, he was someone who was never, I can't imagine him being possessive of somebody else. Have I frozen again?
I think she's gone again.
Hello, sorry, you've got to do all again. Did you not hear a thing?
Yeah, I didn't hear. I heard my name and then nothing.
We have some
what I'm going to
sounds.
do is I'm going to say my bit and then I'm going to try and stop the video. You guys can still talk. I'll still be here. I can still hear you. I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to try and go downstairs because this is just going to keep happening. It's really annoying. But what I said is one of my favorites on the topic of love was the reflection of love. And the reason is I think it represents Michael really well, because we know from various sources that he was someone who never judged anybody else. He would never have been possessive over anybody else. I mean, if anything, I think he was the complete opposite of that. I know there's the story of Lisa Marie in the studio, and I can't remember the story verbatim, but she was sort of trying to talk to him and trying to be affectionate with him, and he was kind of fobbing her off because he was just focused on his music and sort of saying really childlike things to her, and then she kind of walked out and he said something like, oh, is she on her period or something like that. So I think he was like the complete opposite, like just completely probably quite the opposite of being possessive. I think he was a bit too much the other way, just kind of very laissez-faire, let people think what they want to think or do what they want to do or act how they want to act. And I know there's another story about Slash, and you know, he would kind of smoke in the studio, and Michael was just, you know, whatever. If that's, you know, obviously Michael would have been anti-smoking, but if that's what people do and that's what they want to do, then he wasn't one to judge people. So I can really believe that he was one of these people to just let people be who they are, and you know, just let them spread their wings and get on with life, really. And the other one that I liked was trust, again, because I feel like it was quite representative of, you know, his feelings towards relationships with others. And he talks about the fact that we often kind of not blame others, but we kind of look to others to improve our own insecurities, and actually it has to come from within. And I think that while Michael was probably quite insecure in a lot of ways, I think that he, in a lot of ways, he was very comfortable with who he was, and that's why he fought so hard to continue to be that person. I think in a lot of ways he knew who he was comfortable with that, and he didn't need other people to, you know, tell him it was okay and to kind of give him that reassurance. He was pretty self-secure in a lot of ways. I do find it really ironic, talking of pictures going with particular poems or entries. So on page 60, this is where the trust entry is, and I find it so ironic that on the same page as trust, who do we have on there? Wade Robson. So yeah, that kind of pisses me off a little bit, but
just cross him out.
Yeah, I will.
Draw some devil ears on there, you know.
Black marker out.
I'll have to do what I did with my ex's pictures, just like cut the head out, you know.
Get some white out.
No. It's not even worth getting this book ruined.
Exactly. And actually, this is something that we spoke about earlier. Betty Lou said, how different would that particular entry have been, and his belief in trust and the idea of kind of feeling self-secure and just trusting your own self. She did say that she wonders how different that would have been if it was written after the 93 allegations, whether that, you know, would have changed his mindset on that particular front. So that would be very interesting.
Yeah, you know what I also see, that this is like, and they are together, trust, courage, love. It's like a trilogy. Yeah. And what I thought, what a wonderful thing would this be, to have like a little book with this, and this is explaining the world, you know. I mean, I remember my little niece coming home from school. I mean, now she's grown up. Well, this person is doing this, and I thought it's my best friend, and blah blah. And now she was talking bad about me, and she cried a lot of tears about these things. And how nice it would be to have a little booklet where you can, when the time is come, just read to them, to explain, you know, how about trust, how about love, and what is courage, you know?
Yeah.
They would understand. It's written in a way that children would easily understand what it is about.
Well, I think this book was probably written for I think it was written in that way for that reason as well. I think it was written in this way to appeal to everybody, to appeal
it would
to
be
children.
like putting a band-aid on the tortured soul of the child, no?
Yeah.
By whoever. I mean, children can be awful in between each other.
Very true.
Oh yeah. Casey and Nicole, you both loved, which I did as well actually, and if you hadn't chosen to talk about this, I probably would have spoken about this myself, because I love this. And again, I was surprised in the poll to see that this was quite far down on the list. I absolutely love this one. I, you, we. Casey, why did you like that one in particular? Sorry, this is on page 103.
For me, especially when it comes to love, it's the love between two people. You're no longer two separate, but you're more of one person. So like the last sentence says, look into your hearts, it says, what do you see? Not you and I, but only we. And I feel like that completely speaks to, I think, most people who really find that true love, that very powerful feeling.
Nicole, do you want to elaborate on that?
I like the way that it gives the relationship a life, in the same way that he personified the wall in Berlin 1989. He does the same thing with the we becomes like its own entity and even speaks to the individuals. I just love the way that that's written.
I think we is like a huge theme, isn't it, throughout the whole book?
It is.
It's that idea of kind of unity and
connection.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, last theme. So spirituality, this is the big one. This is the big talking point for various reasons. Casey, you chose for this one Angel of Light and God. So what did you, Angel of Light, I haven't seen a lot written about this one. So what was your feelings? Why did you particularly like that one? This is on page, where are we? Angel of Light is on page 105.
This is where it gets hard not having a table of contents. I just like how he kind of described the angels, where angels are female, for instance, which didn't surprise me once I found out. A birth angel recruited from the younger ranks, attends every baby when it appears. Just like he focused a lot on angels, and that's something that resonates a lot with me because of my grandmother. So for me, that completely, it just stood out. And every time when I was looking at spirituality, I just kept coming back to it. Throughout the entire book, I kept coming back to it.
It's very nice, yeah.
It's beautiful, and I just absolutely love it. The way that he speaks about it, it's just amazing.
Sometimes I think you don't know why you particularly like that. It's just that, like you say, some poems, just in life in general, not just Michael Jackson, but just sometimes just particular stories or novels or poems, you just connect with them and you can't really explain why. You just relate to it.
I got back to, because I kept thinking, why do I keep getting drawn back to this specific poem? And it definitely came back to my grandmother, who passed away several years ago. But we always had angels for her. And we actually had one specifically when she got sick. There were just angels everywhere, and I actually have some of them now. And so it's something that's always, the instant thing in my head will always go back to that, and it's something very special to me. And this specific poem just kept coming and just kind of made me feel better too in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. And I know the other one that you picked up on, which was one that I really felt quite strongly about as well, was the one entitled God, which is on page 69. And I just wondered why it'd be good for us to compare our thoughts on that, and why did that one stick out to you in particular?
He speaks a lot about it, and it's kind of cool that before we started, we had even talked about how this is going to be kind of sensitive. But like he even says, it's strange that God doesn't mind expressing himself or herself in all the religions of the world. Like that was really, really cool, because, you know, there's so many different ideas and aspects, and, you know, everyone has a different belief. But I felt that this was just really kind of cool how he explained everything. How God has no form, which was really, really unique as well.
Yeah, see, that's the kind of thing that I picked up on, because I start to think that Michael started to move away from religion. And again, this is something that, you know, feel free to completely disagree with me, but my interpretation of how he felt about God and spirituality, the more that I think about it, and the more research that I do, and the more I listen to what he says, and the more I listen to his songs, and the difference in lyrics and interviews and things like that, I feel like over his life and in this period, I think that he started to move away from religion and more towards spirituality. And I think that he believed in God. I still think that he believed in God, but I think that how he interpreted God and what he thought that God was, I think that his idea of that changed. And I think that he started to see God as being not a person in the way that, you know, religion would teach it, but more of like an entity, or more of an energy. Do you know what I mean?
Like God is kind of like everywhere. Like the world is creation, so you could see the trees, the grass, the animals. Yes, and that's how I saw it too.
There's so many entries in this book where I feel that that's what he's saying, and the fact that he's dedicated a whole entry to God, I feel that it's probably one of the least religious things that I've ever read. And considering it is directed at God, there's not actually a lot about religion in there. It's about his connection to the world, really, and nature and the universe and stuff.
Don't forget, he gave up his religion because he found it so restrictive and everything. And he did not move on to another religion. So he totally changed his view.
He stayed spiritual, just not necessarily bound to one religion.
And what we hear from his children, he always referred still to Jehovah. Jehovah would not like this. Jehovah would like this. So that was still there, but he distanced himself from Jehovah Witnesses' beliefs, I guess.
Yeah. Nicole, what were your chosen ones, let's say, for this section?
I chose, well, I always call it the dance, because that's how it's titled in the Dangerous liner notes, and I read it as the dance for years. So, but in the book it's Dancing the Dream. Is it page 1 that it's on? I think it's,
I think it is. Dancing the Dream, page 1.
And then Dance of Life as well, which is on page 15. I think there's some connections between the two. I love the way that sort of dance is almost a metaphor for life throughout both of them. I love the in the dance that I'm becoming one with everything that exists. The idea that you know, consciousness expresses itself through creation. So like through our, it's almost like he's telling us at the start of the book, through my art you will understand me. That's how I interpret that. And in particular, Dance of Life, obviously, I think maybe if someone read this, I didn't read it before 2009, but if someone did read it before 2009, they might read it differently. But the last section where it talks about a star, what does a star do after it quits shining, I ask myself. And then it talks about a star dying and how he doesn't like that thought. a star can never die. It turns into a smile and melts back into the cosmic music, the dance of life. I like that thought. The last thought I have before my eyes close, with a smile, I melt back.
A cat. I'm so sorry, it keeps making me laugh. Someone's cat is really meowing and it's making me laugh.
Oh, that's mine. I've been
I'm trying to be all serious and listen to you. I keep hearing this.
Well,
Yeah,
that's really intimate conversation. Yeah.
Sorry.
You sound like a very angry cat.
Conversation.
Putting in his 2 cents.
But yeah, that last part, melting back into the music, I really like that idea that, you know, we can so it's almost like his energy is in the music. So that's what we feel when we listen to, you know, when his music lifts our spirit, it's his energy that's doing that. When it consoles us, it's the same. So that's why that one's my favorite.
And Daniela, what about you?
I choose Breaking Free. Well, this cost me, I don't know how many sleepless nights. I was like, oh. And then I decided to call Emma, and I talked to Emma about it, and then she had the sleepless nights.
She passed them to me. It's true. It's true.
I got more to rest. So there is a whole lot coming now. Please bear with me. And I wrote it down, and it took me another night to write that down. So because I want to present it more fluent, and I cannot do that like speaking freestyle. You know, I would not be able to express that. So if you want to open, please, page 132 and read along with me. So how did I come to that? I researched about Deepak Chopra, I told you already, and then I just came to the 7 secrets, where I found this one line, divinity of dance, and well, and then I got really interested, yeah, and then I looked at the books he wrote, and yeah, sometimes you can look a little bit in the book, something to write, and then I discovered this book, Quantum Healing, and that was in a high-speed train, and then it just was like a stroke. So, and I want to read it to you now, and I explain how all this came and what I think about it, but I read it down. Yeah, I hope I'm fluent enough. Okay, we read together. Breaking free. All this hysteria, all this commotion. Space, time, space, energy are just a notion. What we have conceptualized, we have created. All those loved, all those hated. Where is the beginning, where is the end? Time's an arrow, so difficult to bend. Those broken promises, what they meant, those love letters never sent. I found this poem always very mysterious, and I could never make anything out of it, until I found Deepak Chopra's book, Quantum Healing. So, we'll first look at the verses, and after that, at the title of the poem. In the first verse, it talks of time, space, and energy. All this hysteria, all this commotion. We come to this line when we talk about the title, and then it goes, space, energy are just a notion. These are 3 elements from the framework of our world. We live in a space-time continuum that is permeated by energy and created by energy. But many scientists and quantum physicists are no longer sure whether this space-time continuum actually exists or not. Because what is time? Is space real? What is energy? How does it work? Does time pass? Or do we rather move through time? In just a few lines, Michael raises all these questions. With just a few words, he questions our cosmos and immediately answers them himself. What we thought up, we have created. So here he takes up with modern quantum physics and philosophy, which says that everything we experience as reality is a product of our own creative power of thought. Or in other words, we create reality for ourselves. This is an eternally exciting question. Does consciousness create reality? I think knowing of Deepak's first book, Quantum Healing, which was first issued in 1989, and I researched, a book can take about 2 years from the point it's finished by the author to be in the shelves. So that makes roughly 1987. Michael and Deepak must have met in December 1987. I could also research this. I think that Michael could have philosophized a lot with Deepak about this, being influenced by Deepak's philosophies writing this poem. Okay, now let's take a look at the second verse. Where is the beginning, where's the end? Time's an arrow so difficult to bend. In these 2 lines, he takes up the topic of time. He describes time as an arrow that is so difficult to bend. Here we return again to the topic of quantum physics, which conveys time in a completely different way than we think of it. Quantum physicists argue about that not only are time and space not separated from each other, but that also time and space do not exist at all, at least not in the way we imagine them. Here we are back again in the first verse. Time, space, energy are just a notion. So why does MJ here claim that time is a hard arrow to bend? I think that is exactly where the key to this poem lies. We Westerners perceive time as a kind of arrow and often picture it to be exactly that, a timeline with a beginning and pointing to an end. The arrow of time is actually a scientific symbol to represent time. But what if time really is a circle? What if the arrow is actually bent? What if it is not time that passes, but we are moving through time in a circle? This is where the Far Eastern philosophies of Deepak Chopra come in. It is like rebirth or like the circle of nature, the circle of life. We come, leave, return, and leave again, and the cycle continues. But of course, we do not return in the same body, which dies away from us, but out of us we come again. Like the fruits of a tree are reborn from the same tree again. The fruit falls down from the tree and is dead, but the branch where it was attached to also shared its life, the life of the fruit. In other words, the whole tree has experienced everything that this single fruit has experienced. And couldn't this thinking be why MJ always said we are one? So every time new fruits are reborn from our tree, how do they remember their past life? Yes, only through the branch that gave birth to them, lived them, and supplied them with energy. But what happens if the fruits are born on the younger branches, ones that carry fruits for the first time? They probably don't remember their fruits experiences because they don't have any yet. Keep this in mind as we look at the next part. those broken promises, what they meant, those love letters never sent. What happens then to the broken promises? What's then with the love letters that were never sent? This is how I would explain it. In one life, the love letter is not sent. In the next one, it will. And it will cause a different and completely different quality of life, completely different situations, and possibly different decisions to come. Or the love letter doesn't mean anything to the recipient, or doesn't arrive, and in the end, the reborn remains in the time circle. Because at the next rebirth, the letter could be sent to someone else in a different way, or gets lost in the mail, never to be delivered at all. And then completely different possibilities arise again. That is countless. The same with the promises. Again, I see a teaching of Deepak Chopra, who says, it is only probabilities to which our own decisions lead. Our consciousness creates aims and then also decides whether the aims are realized themselves or not. What if I would decide to live this same life again? Could I send the unsent letter away? Only I would first have to remember that I had planned to do so. Seeing it in this way, if it was possible, one could perfect his own life. A lot of thinking, right? And if I fetch very far and say the fruit is an apple, we now have all an apple head. Now to the title, Breaking Free. At the first look, it has nothing to do with what is in the verses, right? Research says that Michael left Jehovah's Witnesses in 1987. The exact month I could not find. Research says that Michael met Deepak in December 1987 at a party at Neverland. Both hit off right away and developed a deep and long-lasting close friendship, which lasted until the end. Could it be that Michael was so deeply impressed by the teachings which Deepak brought into his life that this caused a kind of shift in him? We were talking about these different ways, the different albums, Bad, Thriller, his intentions with this, and then comes along Dangerous. And in the middle we find this year 87. And I find this theme is heavily picked up again in other poems like Once We Were There, Are You Listening, Heaven is Here, and the name says it, Quantum Leap, which are all in the book featured right following Breaking Free. Is this just a coincidence? Breaking free, this quote also explains the first line, all this commotion, all this notion. Maybe describing what he felt, Jehovah's Witnesses brought onto him in the last time that led him to leave them. He broke free and found a new way of perspective and philosophy through Deepak, which was really different and more of what he found in himself, in his own heart, than the narrow teachings by Jehovah's Witnesses and the struggle he had with them being scolded restricted to the oldest and doomed to be followed everywhere by chaperones. We know he was still very much believing in prayers, the people was important to him, and he believed in God, but just in a different way now, it seems. Seeing him maybe as the creator of energy and life, and as long as he knows that, belonging to a religion is not the important. Expressing this clearly in the first verse of his poem, God. Asking his God, and will you be there, if he would still be there for him. They told me a man should be faithful. Everybody is trying to control me, pleading, will you be there for me and care enough to bear me? Adding in his songs, through my trials and tribulations, to doubts and frustrations in my deepest despair. Will you be there? Armageddon of the brain. So by all means, finding this in the poem Breaking Free, which was always unclear and mysterious to me, it unlocked a whole new reading of the book to me. How about you? Could you put on the microphones? I can hear you then.
So Daniela did this to me on, it was probably like Monday or Tuesday. And I just did what you guys were doing. I just sat there for like half an hour and listened to all her theory, right? So she's talking, I'm like, yeah. And, you know, I'm thinking about it. And then she mentions about the title, you know, she talked about all the dates. And then she talked about the title and the fact that the title could relate to him leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. And honestly, I never do this, but I didn't like Danielle. I went, like, it was just some like moment of enlightenment for me. And then the rest of what Daniela said about sort of researching into Deepak Chopra, looking at Will You Be There? I mean, all this stuff just started happening for me. And she's right. I mean, it just took over me for 2 or 3 days. I couldn't sleep thinking about it. I was just, honestly, I just felt like I really had this moment of enlightenment of seeing how Michael just had this transition in his life from this kind of religious person to this spiritual person, and from this person who, even if you look at kind of his albums, you know, like Thriller and Bad was all about chasing the numbers and chasing the commercial success. And although he also wanted that for Dangerous, the Dangerous album started to really have a lot more of this kind of spiritual work with, you know, Heal the World and Will You Be There and Keep the Faith and Gone Too Soon. And honestly, you know, as soon as Daniela said that to me about Deepak and I did my own research, I really, I mean, it's something that you guys might already know, but for me, it was something that I certainly didn't know. I didn't even know who Deepak Chopra was. And when I started to do all this research, I really do feel like this book and me having done that research and speaking with Daniela, I really feel like I've got an understanding of Michael now that I've never had before. Never.
Same happened with me. The same happened. It's just all like, it all shifted into place.
And the key thing, what you said, which is why we're bringing this up in this discussion, is because when I went back and I reread a lot of the entries from the book, I reread them in a completely different way. A lot of it didn't really make sense to me the first time, particularly the ones that were quite spiritual. I feel like there are quite a lot of hidden messages in a lot of them. But once you know everything that you just explained and you reread, particularly like Breaking Free, Are You Listening? Are You Listening is a huge one. God. For me, honestly, everything just kind of fell into place, and I really think that you've hit the nail on the head personally.
I think it is for me, it was like the key to Dancing the Dream.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's set somewhere in the middle, and all the following is just so heavily influenced by this Vedic thinking, which Chopra obviously brought into his life.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that you mentioned Will You Be There, because I can't remember the exact chain of events, but I know after I spoke to you, I started to do some research on Will You Be There, and various kind of things came up about that song that was kind of proving your theory, which I won't go into all of them. But one of the things that I did notice is the first thing I did actually is I looked at the performances, and I thought, I wonder if there's any kind of symbolism in any of the performances. And it was really interesting. Again, it's something that I've never noticed before, and I would never have noticed if we hadn't had this conversation. But in the MTV 10th anniversary performance, which is obviously renowned for being amazing and, you know, really symbolic in a lot of ways, I did notice that in one section, the dancers closed the Bible. And to me, that was so, after what you said, and the fact that this that song was written in 91, so again it would have just been after he met Deepak Chopra, and all this would have happened, this kind of shift. For me to have that on stage, of the Bible being closed, and it's like it's poignant enough for it to be done on camera, so you can't actually see Michael when that's been done. The camera goes away from Michael to the Bible to watch it being closed, and then it goes back to Michael, who looks really sad, but then he goes into kind of some spiritual type of dancing. To me, I know you can have like a biased view, you know, you're kind of looking for things to confirm your theory, but for me there's just a few things that I've researched since then just to completely make sense now that I know, you know, what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Nicole, do you know anything about Deepak or about his Michael's kind of spiritual journey or anything? Does it sound like what Daniela kind of discovered, or what she thinks could be a possibility?
It's interesting listening. There was a lot of what Daniela said that I came to those conclusions, but in different ways, if that makes sense. I had done a lot of reading on Will You Be There before. Sorry, my little guy's here. I hope you can't hear his iPad. I'd done a lot of analysis and reading on Will You Be There, so that kind of, I came to breaking free into Dancing the Dream after having done that. So I almost came to it in a backwards way to what you came to it, Emma. Like it's sort of, but my understanding and my interpretation is quite similar. Definitely not as thorough and as deep as what Daniela just went, but very similar in terms of my thinking of it. I just came to it in a very different way.
Yeah, I always read that poem and said, what is it? What is it? Was it? Title makes no sense to the verses. I could not decrypt it at all. And it's very cryptic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing what wondered me then is if he is using Deepak so heavily, like that, this whole healing thing, yeah, heal the world, healing this, healing that. And the friendship they had, and having read that, the 7 keys, yeah, where he says, well, one key of happiness in your life is that you have to find your purpose. So, and I think maybe Chopra went, okay, I do have these teachings, yeah, which I very strong belief, and I think I can heal the world and heal people with that, yeah. With this knowing this, like bringing this out into the open, we would think like Michael has a whole bigger stage to do that than he alone would have. And so the both of them set out on a mission. Because they saw that purpose of their love.
I think as well, you know, Michael, in terms of musical success, I mean, he couldn't really have gone any further with that. I mean, he literally was the best-selling artist of all time.
Yeah.
So I think that he'd kind of closed that goal, if you like, or that target, he'd reached that target. And so, like you say, I think that while he was still trying to reach that target in terms of matching Thriller, I think that Deepak made him realize that actually
that's not important.
No, there's more to life, and there's more that you can use your platform for than just selling records. You have all of this influence, and you know, this is what you should be or could be using that influence and your talents for. And like you say, I think it's exactly about purpose in life. He made Michael realize that his purpose in life was to heal the world, and that he could do that with his musical genius and his platform. Literally the most famous person on the planet. If anyone was, I mean, I heard a quote recently. Vincent Patterson described Michael as being the closest thing to Jesus that, you know, there could ever be on earth. And it's true in terms of not only his personality and all of those amazing qualities like love and kindness, in terms of being such a superstar. Everyone in the whole world, even, you know, tribes in, you know, in countries where they don't have access to technology or music. I mean, everyone in the whole world knows who Michael Jackson was. In what other person can you say that that's true?
I found people, Maasai in Kenya, they live in little huts made out of cow doo-doo, they know Michael Jackson. And they can sing his songs.
So what better person
we sing them, but they know the melodies and everything.
So what better person to give that task to?
So this is what I said. He was a big multiplier of this message.
That's a really,
more
really
than
interesting.
People could have ever achieved. I mean, he got very prominent in his own ways, but you and me, we did not know a lot about Deepak, and I bet like millions of other people don't do, but they all know about Michael Jackson, and that was just a big space to play with, no?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a really
purpose
interesting
in life. Your purpose in life, find your purpose in life.
And I think what you said about the Jehovah's Witness thing, that for me, that was the moment where I was like, wow, this is definitely what I think happened. Because like I said, the way that he still talks about God, but the way that he talks about it is completely different to when he was younger. So
I think like Michael, I mean, he traveled the world, you know, but in very small setting, and you know, he did not get in contact with all this stuff. He saw it, and then moved on. And what he know was the teachings of his mother from Jehovah's Witnesses. He went to the temple with her and everything. And it's like, yes, you can travel the world, but you can still have a very small horizon. This is always what I say, me working on a cruise ship, Yes, you travel the world, but your own world gets very small, And maybe this is something what we could see with Michael, He traveled the world and he got around a lot and he read a lot, But this was just like the opening to the horizon to him. I do not find other words now.
I agree.
I could tell you in German better now.
Unfortunately, I didn't really get a chance to do too much research on who Deepak Chopra was. But after like just sitting here listening to you guys, I'm definitely going to have to go look a little bit into him.
And I think this was amazing. It set me off on a real big journey, you know.
I love discovering.
I could not find rest in my head anymore. No.
Until you spoke to me, and then you slept fine.
It got better. Then I was writing and texting more, and I was not alone with my thoughts anymore. I had you to resonate then, no?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Okay, so let's go on to the poll results. So I asked a couple of questions on Facebook group. about which poem was your favourite and which essay or story was your favourite. So, favourite poem, in third place with 9 votes was Child of Innocence. In number 2 with 16 votes was Will You Be There, one of my absolute favourites, love that. And in first place, interestingly, one that we haven't overly spoken about today, but I know is very popular, and as Nicole said, it was in the Dangerous notes, you know, the CD notes, Planet Earth. But I think we kind of, you know, that's just a given, isn't it? It's given that it's amazing. It's a given that it was written by Michael. It's, you know, I don't feel that needs as much discussion as maybe some of the other ones. Then I asked favourite essay or stroke story, reflection. So in third place with 5 votes was But the Heart Said No. It is a great one. Number 2 with 9 votes was The Last Tear. And in first place with 15 votes was Dance of Life. So they were the 2 that people voted as being their favourite. Sherry said, Dance of Life is one of my favourite stories because it contains one thought which to me is the epitome of Michael Jackson. A star can never die. It just turns into a smile, melts back into the cosmic music, the dance of life. I think that or very similar has been quoted by Michael a few times. And, you know, we know that was a strong belief of his. He was just going to become a part of the universe and never really kind of die. So that's a really nice quote. Okay, let's spend 5 minutes just talking about our favourite photos. I was blown away by the photos in this book. Moonwalk has some great ones, but these photos are just something else. They're just absolutely amazing. One of my favourites was, I do have a few, but one of them, apart from this one, which obviously is everyone's favourite, I really loved this one too. I know this one has come up a few times in the book.
Yep.
Obviously, Michael with a book is always a winner. And I really love this one. Yeah, and that one, I really love him from the kind of Bad Dangerous era. So yeah, all of these are pretty much full of the Bad and Dangerous.
Bad and Dangerous was my the look he had then.
Yeah.
I have that. What do you think?
Yes.
Of that? Why is that mirrored like this? What is that? You know, it's the same picture, but it's mirrored.
Yeah.
You have an explanation?
Isn't he sitting against a mirror? Isn't that, I've seen a picture of him sitting further out and he's actually sitting against a mirror.
There's another one very similar to that where he's got his head in his hands. Interestingly, there's quite a few pictures in the book that were clearly taken, you know, in the same setting on the same day. And Daniela, I think that you showed me a picture of Michael with Deepak Chopra.
I sent it to you exactly with the first text you said about Michael Chopra, which I sent you that had the picture on top.
But he was in that same, wasn't he?
He must have been in that shooting session, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's one picture he's standing right next to him.
Yeah. But there is another picture here where he's in the mirror, but he's got his head in his hands. So I'm gonna have to try and find it. Does someone else want to share one of their favourites while I try and find this?
Yeah, this is one of my favourites.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's also very nice, yeah.
I love that one.
That next to
He looks like he starts to soar very soon. He starts to fly.
Yeah.
It's next to the end of Heal the World.
Yeah.
So Heal the World goes over the page. So yeah, it's with the end of Heal the World.
This was the picture I was talking about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Then when we're talking about pictures, we go back to Breaking Free, because this picture is also very telling of what I think Breaking Free is about. 134.
Oh yeah, Will You Be There with the Angel?
He turns around, he turns the back, but it seems like it's forceful. It's not like slowly turning around or standing there. It's like he swings around. You see that? Yeah.
Like that Casey too, yeah.
Yeah.
He was hot. He was just hot, wasn't
Yep.
he?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Turning my back. Yeah.
I picked a favorite painting as well. I like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's lovely.
Yep.
The
Just
photos
the
always
fairy
stand out.
lights and everything. It's so
Favorite
sweet.
painting.
Do you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of in Peter Pan, you know, the Lost Boys and their tree house.
Yes.
That's what I envisage when I see that
That's an
picture.
image out of this, for
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Any others? I mean,
Just
there's some
all of-
amazing artwork, because this is the other thing, isn't it? He's not just writing poems and essays. You know, a lot of the drawings are his. I mean, he was just
Incredibly talented.
unbelievably talented. Some of those drawings are just wow.
That was the other painting I really liked.
Yeah,
Yeah, I showed that.
yeah.
All the nations, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
Do we know if Michael drew? Because like look at that. That is just unbelievable.
He very well may have.
I just wondered, did Michael draw all of these? Because at the back it does say paintings by, I can't really say the names, to be honest. David Nordahl. I know he's quite famous in the MJ community.
David Nordahl worked a lot for Michael Jackson. Like this picture, this painting you showed before with the children, which you referred, that's a scene out of Peter Pan. That's a painting by David Nordahl.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a shame that it doesn't specify kind of which ones. Oh, I didn't notice that before. Michael in the corner.
Yeah, Nordahl would not paint something like this. He painted very colorful, like
No, I'm just saying. I looked at that picture and I didn't
Not
even see
sketching.
Michael was in the corner.
Yeah.
That's really cool. But yeah, I just wish under the.
Which page is this?
It's 39.
39.
I just wish that under each picture it had, you know, the artists, and I'd really like to know which one.
Yeah, because like,
oh yeah, the cloud. I didn't even see that before.
No, me neither.
He looks out of the sky, yeah, he looks down.
And look,
Great.
I love how the children are looking up at him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking up. That's really cool.
Oh, strange! I did never see that.
It's so subtle. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So overall view of the book. So I
You
guess
forgot
needless to say that.
something, Emma.
Yeah.
Yeah, you forgot the thing, the non-fan. Which one would you recommend to a non-fan?
Oh yeah. So that was going to come. Yeah. Okay. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask. Yeah. Thank you. One of the questions that I wanted to ask, and I'd be really interested to read your comments on this as well, was, given that this book is really a picture into Michael's soul and his mind and his heart, I was really interested to know if you had to just show one of those entries to a non-fan, so someone who doesn't really know about Michael Jackson, or even maybe, you know, like a doubter or someone who is literally the opposite of a fan who criticizes him or whatever, which entry do you think would be best to show that person to best represent or expose Michael for who he truly is? Which entry do you think best represents Michael and what he has in his heart? Daniela, what would you go for?
Yeah, I would have to decide what kind of person this is. Is it somebody who's interested in his music? Is it somebody who is interested in his person? No? So I would decide, like, if I can only pick one. Normally I would say these two you have to read, but if I could only decide on one, I would decide for getting to know the person, Magical Child, because it is autobiographic and it makes you understand the person he is, and what led him to be the person he is, and for understanding the artist, how I make music.
Yeah, good choices.
Yeah.
Nicole, what would you choose?
I would choose Magical Child as well.
Yeah.
I would hope I could show both parts, but for the same reasons that it's got that sort of autobiographical story to it. But it also somehow he can twist it around and make you question, hang on, how has this happened to me? That kind of, when he questions it.
Yeah.
There's a part in part 1 where he says the magical child is me, but it's also you. And I think that would have an impact on somebody that didn't necessarily know who he was.
Casey, what would you choose?
I've really got 2. So Courage, and then of course, Will You Be There?
Yeah.
I think both of those are kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah, for sure. I think I would have to go with Magical Child as well. It is one of my favourites, and I think particularly if you put the 2 parts together, it's kind of the whole picture, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall opinion, needless to say, I'm sure we all absolutely love it. But is there any kind of additional comments that people want to make? I mean, Brenda Jenkins called it a sacred treasure. Laura Gunster said, no book tells us more about Michael than this one. Tammy says it's her #1 favourite. So is there any other comments that
Definitely
people
a hidden gem. It's not a book I think definitely not everybody knew about it, because even, I've been like same as you, Em. I've been a Michael fan, since I was very young. And up until the last year, I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's absolutely beautiful.
I don't think there would be a fan that wouldn't love to have this book if they, I think, of course you would want it as soon as you knew about it. All of us went and got it as soon as we found out about it. But I think, I don't know if we've mentioned this, but I one of my favorite things about it is it's very versatile. I think you could sit with your children and kind of flick through and read a couple of things and look at the pictures, and even with young children. And then as they grew, there's more and more, like, kids have
there's really something for everybody, for every age group.
Yeah, exactly. But kids will take what they understand. They'll take little bits, and it almost would grow with you. But the same as us, I'm sure we could all read it again in a year and probably find something else.
So what I think why this is not so very known is the same thing that I had. I told you that I had a German, translated German copy first. That was somewhere in the 90s. The German translation does not do it justice. And I could think this is happening with lots of other translations too. How do you translate this poetry? Can you translate it? Yes, you can, of course, word for word, but the whole thing, well, I know from the German version, it totally got lost.
Yeah.
It was just words.
I think poetry in particular must be really hard.
Yeah, I said, can you translate poetry? Well.
Yeah. No, because if you're gonna make it rhyme, then the message has to be slightly different, and it must.
Yeah. And the rhymes don't match, and the verses are just cut. No.
Yeah.
So maybe this is why, like, the overall opinion, no, never gets like advertised really through the fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you buy a copy, buy the English one and just go through the length of understanding it.
Okay, cool.
And this is different now too. But in the 90s when this came out, I know my school English was like nothing, no. Cannot read that, but this is different now. People are much more exposed to the English, and even if you're not from England or from the United States or Australia, you have a certain understanding of English through whatever, no?
Yeah, and obviously understand is easier than having to speak. So
Yeah, I only had my time, my school book, you know, my grammar book, and a very, very limited sort of words. But this is different now, how you're exposed to English almost everywhere. So.
Yeah. Or learn through Michael Jackson books, you know.
Yeah, that's how happened to me. Did I ever tell you this story? No. I did learn English because I heard that Billie Jean song, and that went right into my legs. Yeah, and I was a very shy young girl, and I took like they were playing it on the dance floor over and over, and I danced, and then I took all my together, and I went to the DJ, which I probably would have never done otherwise, and asked who that was. Yeah, and I go home and I go to my cousin, and very coincidentally, I come into his room, and there he was, a Thriller album. He already bought it, and we wanted, of course, to know what is the meaning of the songs, and so we would sit there with the dictionary and look up the single words.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So Billie Jean was your stepping stone. And look how far you've come now.
Yeah.
Doing 2-hour discussions.
What I thought this today, I always like to listen to other person's fan stories.
Yes.
How you became a fan, how it developed, and maybe our viewers would like to get to know us a little bit better. I mean, it's not that we don't do a whole show about ourselves, but maybe every time one person tells a little bit more how it came about to be a Michael fan, how it developed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do a poll on that. I mean,
yes.
I'm not talking about a whole show. We are a book club and we do reviews, no?
Yeah.
But maybe to get some context also better, what one is talking about, from which corner you come. Corner.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start to wrap things up. So I'm going to go through the quiz answers now. So now you can start commenting with what your answers were, and obviously you can mark your own, and then at the end let me know how many you got out of 10. So number 1, who is the book dedicated to? You could have either had his mother or Deepak Chopra. So 1 mark for one of those. Number 2, finish the quote from the introduction. I think Michael appeals to the child in all of us. Number 3, how many verses are in Planet Earth? You could have had 6 or 7. There's a verse at the bottom of the left-hand side, which I don't know if that verse is split into 2 or whether that's 1 verse and then it goes on to the next verse. So 6 or 7 verses. Number 4, a drawing of which animal accompanies the essay enough for today. That was a dolphin. Number 5, complete the title of the essay, The Fish That Was Thirsty. That was another really popular one on the poll. Number 6, a screenshot from which short film shares the page with the poem Quantum Leap. It was black or white. Number 7, what is the title of the last entry in the book? It's Look Again, Baby Seal. Number 8, what are the last 3 words written by Michael prior to the credits? It's The Dream Continues. Number 9, which song appears first on the Dangerous album? It was Heal the World, out of Will You Be There and Heal the World. And number 10, which song appears first in the book? It's also Heal the World. So let me know how well you did out of 10. And now to go on to what we're going to be discussing next month, which I'm so excited about. Oh my God, I don't know how many times I've posted about this on the group, probably at least 3 in the last month. I just absolutely love it. So obviously next month is October, strong Halloween theme, which we know Michael's really into. So I wanted to really do something to commemorate Halloween. What better way to commemorate Halloween than to talk about thriller? What is there available to talk about thriller? Well, for me, the best thing that I've experienced that talks about thriller is not actually a book. I normally kind of advertise with a physical book. I don't have a physical book because it's going to be the audio documentary on YouTube, which is free to listen to, by Damien Shields, called The Genesis of Thriller. And honestly, it's probably one of the best things that I've ever listened to about Michael, and I know it's really, really popular among the fans. So I'm so super excited to talk about that. I've listened to it 5 times. Now I've got an excuse to listen for a 6th time. So we'll be discussing that on Sunday, the 1st of November. We thought probably best to avoid Halloween because we know that there's a few events going on. You've got Brad Sundberg's 5K walk, you've got Brenda and Siren, I think it's Brenda and Siren together, they're promoting the Thriller walk. So we're going for Sunday again, Sunday the 1st of November, so put that in your diary. And I just wanted to finish off with a named quote from Elizabeth Amisu from the Journal of Michael Jackson Academic Studies. She did a whole study and a whole chapter of her book entitled On Michael Jackson's Dancing the Dream. And I think this really kind of puts everything together really that we've been talking about this evening. I think it was just a nice way to close. So she says, no longer does Jackson encourage his listeners to make a change, he becomes the change. And I think that refers nicely to the shift that we were talking about. ... The quote isn't in one go, so I've kind of taken different bits from different paragraphs. Dancing the Dream puts this journey into seamless context. It is more than a gift for the fans. It is an experience in and of itself. The poetic lyrics of 14 songs, which are the songs on Dangerous, are likewise nestled invisibly between pages 1 and 5 of Dancing the Dream. The world already knows this book, wherein Dangerous as its disguise, it has already made its way into the homes of millions. And I really liked that because, you know, we've talked a lot about the book being kind of very unfamiliar, even within the Michael Jackson community. And she talks a lot, if anyone's interested in reading her chapter, she talks a lot about the link between Dancing the Dream and the Dangerous album. And so, you know, she's saying, okay, well, this book might not be very familiar, but, you know, millions of people have got the Dangerous album in their homes, and a lot of the works from the book kind of overlap with the songs that are in Dangerous. So the messages are still getting across to people, even if people haven't heard of the book. So I think that's a really nice way to finish. So thank you for joining us. Really sorry about all the technical hitches and the cats meowing and God knows what's gone on this evening. But I hope you've enjoyed the chat. We've, as you know, as always, we love doing this. We really love to talk about Michael and to talk about the book. We're all really excited about next month, so make sure you join us on the 1st of November. And as always, if you've got any feedback or if you want to keep on chatting in the comments, then please do so. Otherwise, we're going to say bye-bye for now.
Bye.